Good evening, and welcome back to Third Phase UFO Report. I am your host tonight, Michael Roser, and once again, we're going to dip back into the past and check out some of these amazing sightings so that they don't fall by the wayside, wherein we may be seeing some similar things today even. Around 4 years ago, with the dissemination of certain UFO footage from the Department of Defense, we entered an era of a soft disclosure, or at least trickling of information that impacts the community and the consciousness of human beings at large. Now we're afforded the opportunity to go back into our archives and look through some of these videos and photographs and see the similarities and raise more questions about what's being presented to us now versus what we've seen. Folks, it's going to be a great episode. Buckle up and keep your eyes to the skies. After the show, stick around. I have a very special treat for all of you interested in archaeology and the paranormal and how they may coincide with ancient sites. Buckle up, everyone. It's going to be quite a ride.
Let's just get to it straight up. Mount Shasta, California. This is coming in from MUFON, number 99821. Some people are speculating as well that there is some kind of hidden secret city beneath its peaks as well. What is going on here?
Mount Shasta is a very interesting location, and there are many cultures who hold it in high regard in respect to it being a sacred space. There is purportedly some sort of city encased within the mountain itself, and this has been aptly named Telos. This particular civilization is rumored to be left over from the Lemurian culture, who, perhaps in the face of a cataclysmic event, journeyed into the earth, where they sustained themselves. It's often been said today that over time, unfortunately, we cannot enter Telos physically. It's become more of a metaphysical space. That being said, if you were to try and enter, you would have to raise your vibration to actually be intermeshed with that particular site.
Well, the witness states this. He spotted a large hovering light over Mount Shasta with a cigar-shaped object below to the right, and then it took off, and the object was no longer seen on the mountain. So whatever it was basically stationary for a while and then just took off. What it is, I'm not exactly sure, but these photographs are definitely compelling.
Around the mid-90s, there was supposedly some pyramid that was located in New Mexico, which housed a specific craft left over from those who voyaged out of the fall of Atlantis. This particular craft was very translucent in appearance, and for somebody to drive it, it was more of a telepathic connection rather than physically getting inside of this craft. Is it possible that Mount Shasta has something similar, and we're seeing this in the way of it being brought out into the open? The overall purpose of this craft was to lay dormant until an event came wherein a specific extraterrestrial species was hostile and aggressive, trying to take over the Earth. The idea was that the person anointed would get into the craft, fly high above into the cosmos, and through thought, make these particular beings sick to their stomach or sick in other ways that would eventually push them off of the planet and out of our vibration.
What's your thoughts here, Brent?
I like that he's got a series of photos here. Could this object actually be coming behind the mountain? That would give it some scale. This would be huge if that was the case. I like the way you see some zigzags in that other photo. It seems like this thing has almost a tail. Is this like something mechanical?
I'm wondering, maybe it's some kind of laser being shot down to the mountain. But then again, it could be representation of it just taking off at a high speed and leaving this trail of light behind it.
Whatever we are seeing in this photograph or series of photographs, it's certainly there in the environment. And I like the way that Blake mentioned perhaps we're seeing some sort of extension of light going towards the mountain, wherein we're usually inclined to think about it moving away. Both are possibilities, and either way, we're going to keep our eyes over on Mount Shasta to see what else may arise. Let's move on to the next sighting.
There is something going on in the sky, and if you look very closely, this thing doesn't resemble an airplane or a drone that I'm aware of. It definitely seems peculiar, and we want to know what happened over South Dakota and I'm sure other people may have seen this exact phenomenon. So we're awaiting those videos. But right now, it happened at Sioux Falls around 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, as Revival or Riot says. And he says we need to credit the link back to them. Oh, well, that's what we're going to do, definitely. You can find the original link below in the description. But we're doing some enhancements here, and whatever left this trail behind is very peculiar. It almost seems like an orb.
My initial thoughts about this sighting were relatively casual, but as I've spent a little time looking at this video closer, there's one thing I can say for sure, and that is that whatever we're seeing here does not belong in the sky. If this is some sort of localized contrail, that would be something new, but it doesn't seem very intentional. In fact, the trajectory this thing takes is wildly out of control.
Not a drone, not an airplane, but to make this kind of substantial chemtrail a circular pattern in the sky, what is it releasing? It is baffling at the moment.
Yeah, YouTube's having a problem with these small channels. When they upload something, the quality is basically put down to like a 360 quality. We're going to have to reach out to Rival or Riot if he's actually got the higher res version of this, because I'd really like to zoom in right at the end where that thing's diving down and get a close-up. What is this?
We want to get your thoughts below in regards to what happened over Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because something definitely fell out of the sky.
Well, as the boys do mention in their analysis, there was no air show going on that day, so this isn't one of these jumpers coming down and putting on display. If it was a rocket, I figure we would see the trajectory coming into the space that it's now inhabiting, but we don't see anything of the sort. And that leaves me only with the other possibility being that perhaps this is some sort of space debris or something that we had made or another country had put into space and gotten caught in the gravitational pull, brought down, and somehow malfunctioned. And yet this is what we're seeing. It's very curious, and although we don't have an explanation, it behaves in a familiar fashion, but at the same time, we still can't put a finger on it. Let's get to the next sighting.
All right, the TR3B, is it back? Well, I'd have to say this is some of the best footage that I've seen. It is a little low quality, but you could see and make out a massive triangular shaped craft.
Blake, this is basically the representation of a TR3B. We have the three lights at each of the tips of this triangle and the center source of power.
I chose this clip because beyond the TR3B fascinating me personally, it is actually representative of one of the sightings I saw. In my case, I did see the three lights on each of the apexes of the triangle, and yet I was not able to see some of the other adorning lights like we're seeing in this video. This one is very indicative of the TR3B classic model that has been sighted in our skies over and over and over again. It's not limited to one country, so perhaps this is more of an international affair rather than something more localized. Very, very interesting craft, and of course, one of my favorites.
It shows it right there, right in the middle. And when that laser pops out, that's when it gets very interesting. I'm thinking or wondering, was this a drone with a laser pen light attached to it just to create an effect like that? But again, it doesn't look to be that way. I think this thing's very large.
Yeah, it's hard to make out exactly what size this is, because we don't see any perspective behind it or in front of it. So we're still guessing on the exact size of it, but you do notice the laser activity. This definitely resembles exactly what eyewitness accounts have been reported of this mysterious triangular shaped black craft being spotted. Is this the infamous TR3B?
The laser or spotlight that seems to emanate from the front of the craft is very curious. And although I've heard people talking about this being a facet of this particular model, I've never actually seen it other than a few clips here and there. We noticed that the light behind it is not white, it's actually more of a red hue, and perhaps that's to relate with whatever frequency they're trying to see through, but again, that's just speculation. This is really curious and an awesome sighting, albeit the low quality. Now before we go, I have a little treat for all of you who are interested in archaeology, paranormal, and ancient sites. I'm going to show a video on America's Stonehenge, wherein Jared Murphy and myself had about a week and a half to explore the site and gather as much information about the history and the paranormal activity purportedly happening. And without further ado, enjoy. America's Stonehenge. How did ancient cultures construct this site in observance of celestial movement and astrological events intertwined within the design? Was this a place of ceremony or habitation? If America's Stonehenge is only 4,000 years old, then why have we found evidence of civilization dating from the time before Columbus? Join us as we embark on a fascinating voyage. Across the planet's largest oceans, people journeyed to far-off lands, anchoring a new life and conquering terrain, constructing some of the most impressive architecture. But when was it built and by who? We will explore the possibilities and provide a context for this incredible ancient archaeological site. Dark Hour Paranormal and Jared Murphy present America's Stonehenge.
We just completed our tour of America's Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. The site is quite spectacular. It is, astrologically speaking, containing a number of alignments, equinoxes, solstices, and we were there just after a major full moon event. There are practicing occults that have used this site. Also, there are indigenous peoples that have occupied this site at least for the last few thousand years. There is many indicators that show, even on our last visit, that Michael from Dark Hour Paranormal himself have identified new structures, new signatures in stone, in crystal, in quartz that no one else has seen.
America's Stonehenge draws curiosity from archaeologists, history enthusiasts, and the common family alike. With over 110 acres and only 1.5 acres excavated, there is still much more to learn within the soil and stone structures.
With the signage, you see, and then the tail comes down here.
Early Americans may have created walls that appear serpentine in nature, but there are differences in the architecture. Colonists used field or glacial stones, building upon the dry stacking method. Earlier civilizations used flat slabs as well as cobble and created points in the construct that rose and fell, reminiscent of a serpent.
We think, number one, it's an ancient site. We think it's a ceremonial site. And the question is, who built the site? Native Americans who are in New Hampshire going back over 10,000 years, so they're definitely in this area. But there are some pieces of evidence that suggest maybe old world visitations to the New World before not only Columbus, but going back before the Viking period.
Many cultures have been suspected of occupying America's Stonehenge, but there is still much in the way of mystery surrounding its origin. Evidence has surfaced of Native American, Irish monk, Nordic, and Phoenician presence. Whichever culture was responsible for the birth of this site, they were certainly versed in astronomy and stonemasonry. Many inscriptions have been found within the stone maze, including Ogham, Phoenician, and Iberian Punic script. There are many similarities between America's Stonehenge and other known ancient locations, especially around the northeastern United States, where over 800 archaeological sites stand in reflection of the most precise astronomy. But there are a myriad of distinctive properties that reflect the architecture and design of cultures from thousands of miles away.
At the moonrise over that, from the wind platform to that will be the moonrise. It's also a cross quarter day of February 1st, in block or Candlemas, or Groundhog Days in the same time period.
Super fascinating, the technology that's available now for America's Stonehenge and new research. Michael from Dark Hour and I were able to get extensive background information to decide where we would do archaeological work ourselves, which includes soil research that's being done now, not just on ancient engineered soils that I speak on, but at America's Stonehenge, there are old campfires that have been identified through carbon dating, multiple different kinds of carbon dating, and there's OSL testing, which is optical stimulus luminescence, and that combined with geosurveys, LiDAR, hand LiDAR, are describing the topography and the site in all new ways without intrusive work. This site is proving to continue to unlock new finds, new answers, and new questions. It's quite spectacular.
While there are many fantastic reasons to visit America's Stonehenge, occasionally you'll have a thrill seeker in the way of paranormal investigation that decides to traverse the site. Now, while I'm not against paranormal investigation in any regard, I do believe there are some locations that are best left untouched. In respect to an investigation, what we find at some of these locations may not necessarily be of human origin, not necessarily a dead person who's passed over, spirit lingering in the ethereal. We might be coming up against some very ancient energies that cultures long past had the ability to call in and use to their own will. I imagine Dennis and his family would be held in a particular light to whatever energy is present, dedicating their lives to the protection and analysis of such a site. But there is always the possibility that the spirits called in throughout millenniums still hold the ground sacred and are adverse to any inquiry. My camera froze, I was picking up audio that was not present in my environment, and my electronics in general were going haywire. Nothing was as crazy as what I felt in the way of energy inside the oracle chamber, which I happened to accidentally step into. Oh my god. I don't like it in here. I don't like it in here. What is that? I don't like it in there. I don't like it. I'm not going in there. I don't like it in there. Oh no. Here's an example of some of the aforementioned audio interference. As I walked into the chamber, immediately I felt like I walked into a wall of something incredibly heavy wherein it was pushing on my chest and pushing me out of the chamber. This was the first and last experience I had of this caliber.
The problem with this site, like any others, is when you label things moon temple, sun temple, sacrificial altar, fertility goddess. That's the problem with all of this, is that then you get an image in your mind. And it's very difficult to filter that image out. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at something that, a site where we've gotten carbon dating and different OSL dating and LiDAR and all sorts of work has been done at this site to know that it's been occupied and had occupation over 8,000 years. The reality is that this may not be a table.
I did not necessarily come to this site to investigate the paranormal, as I believe that some of these more ancient energies are best left alone. If this is a sacrificial table, this would be indicative, again, of a very long-lost civilization.
This could be, it could be anything. It literally could be a half feature of a wall that was actually upright. This is part of a picto design of some kind. But unfortunately, sacrificial altar conjures up a way more interesting concept. To say that this is, to say that this is something that you either lay a human being or an animal down, and in reality, this was tilted up, and we're just looking at what was a scratched out something that it's gone, but we don't know that.
All paranormal activity aside, I did have a very unique and interesting experience while walking the grounds with Jared Murphy and Dennis Stone.
Dennis, you've not seen this before on the wall?
I had never seen this before in the wall. I could, on my deathbed or whatever this is. It could be my deathbed. You guys are killing me.
Welcome to the final sacrifice of America's Stonehenge. We're headed to, happily to his sacrifice.
But yeah, that I have never seen before. Nope.
That is a natural...
You know what it is? I've been focusing on this. And your eyes focus on that, you miss the thing next to it.
It's the detail, when it comes down to it. Whether you have 20/20 vision or not. As I looked over here, it was just something that caught my eye, the same way that perhaps something like this did. But again, it was the detail that was very interesting. I had to take a look.
That is awesome. That is totally, I got to get a great... This
is cool, Dennis.
Yeah, I know, and you guys found it.
Man, this is awesome,
Well,
bro.
I should record the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, this is... Scott?
Can you casual discover things? Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world right now than right where I am.
Oh my God. Did you see it first?
Yeah, I did. I discovered
You discovered something.
I don't know what it is.
What is the date today?
It is
Today is the last of the month. Yep.
It is the last of April. Okay, so that's when I have never seen that. Never, ever. And obviously,
so cool.
It's not fresh, no, whatever it is.
No, it's quartz. It seems to be, it's like they found it was convenient, and they, hey, we don't have to mark this stone, it marked itself.
We need Scott Walters here for the geological analysis.
Yeah, look at...
And we need all the thoughts that you have.
Look at what we just found here.
And I never noticed that before. I'm going to get a picture of that too.
Very quickly, I'm going to show you what we've been talking about here at length. I happen to be looking over at this particular stone that Dennis was talking about with a notch on it here. And this one actually lines up with two other stones on the site. And I happen to look down, and this, whatever this is, it's some sort of laying in or inlay of the stone or highlighting of that stone. But it does look like a Phoenician letter. Indeed, what I had discovered did appear to have some resemblance to a Phoenician letter, but more time and analysis is needed to be conclusive.
Number one, we think there was a layering of cultures at the site, and it may have been used over a very, very long time period. The late Louis Winkler from Penn State, he actually published, like I mentioned, his 5 years of research here. And he puts this into like 3 phases of construction and different people building it. But there's about 800 sites in the northeast, and the question are these sites related to? Is it the same culture? Are there similar structures just coincidentally? And now that we're finding these same kind of features in Colorado, Alabama, and on the West Coast, that brings up even a greater question again. First off, we have to find out if they're contemporary or built at different time periods, and if they're built in a similar time period, could these people have been in communications across the landscape? And that we haven't got to yet. We're still kind of, I'm still taken aback that we have these things going across North America. We haven't got to that point of actually figuring out the time periods and if there could be some cultural connection between this site and other sites. Mainstream thinks that anything that's built before the colonial here is a hoax, fake, or fraud. They don't want to admit that these things could be older than the colonial period of time. So this has to be built by the Paddy family, the shoemakers. And at one time they used to say, well, if there's an ancient culture of stone builders, where's the other sites? Mm-hmm. Well, in Goodwin's time they knew of 15. Today we know of about 800 sites. So that question, I don't know, that's kind of a moot point now. There are many, many sites, you know. And maybe this is like Dave Stewart's myth. There was an ancient culture of stone builders or a lithic culture across the Northeast.
Regardless of who is actually responsible for the construction of America's Stonehenge, what does remain is a sense of activity, sprawling structures comprised of stones weighing many tons, and the megalithic and monolithic elements are well established.
I really never have taken it for granted, you know. I've always had a fascination with this, you know. And then when we get into the astronomy, you know, and then the epigraphy of the site, you know, the inscriptions, you know, and then the similarity of these sites to old world sites like the megalithic sites of Europe, and seeing so many comparisons, so many similarities that seem to rule out just coincidence, you know. But it's just a fascinating. Who are the people that built this, you know? And I mean, I think about that all the time, you know. Up in we live literally on the other side here, and I think in my backyard, we may have one of the oldest, you know, stone-built constructions in North America possible, you know, if the data is correct, you know. And then somebody built this. You know, where did the people come from? Why did they build this? What happened to these people? And was it different groups of people at different times that built this? Some of the questions you've already brought up, you know. And then I visited other types of ancient sites out west in the southwest. We loved that kind of thing, you know. I've been to Mexico several times, and then throughout Europe and to Africa and stuff. But to see some of these other different ancient sites and then kind of compare them to this site, the feeling of this site is it's a ceremonial site, not a living site, you know. It's a special place where people came, probably on pilgrimages. They could have lived nearby, they could have lived a distance away, they came here. They may have come up here to celebrate solstices, equinoxes, and all of that, maybe a wedding, maybe a death.
What you're seeing is an example of LiDAR scanning, which allows archaeologists to excavate without invasion.
There is an up-and-coming technology which includes nuclear DNA testing, which is literally sifting the sediments of a site and actually identifying information. Even single granule pieces of DNA can now give us information about what animals, what people, what died and lived and or may have been blown in there from a nearby or distant field or farm or perhaps someplace miles away. This technology, nuclear DNA testing and sedimentary research, is a whole new frontier, and it's very exciting.
Knowing there is very little information that we can concretely say about some of these sites, their preservation is of the utmost importance. It is significant to note that some of these places have been vandalized times over, and unfortunately, the damage has rendered us blind to history. Between OSL, LiDAR scanning, and radiocarbon dating, we will progressively pursue the truth buried within the earth. While America's Stonehenge may lie on acres of bedrock, there is much to be explored in the way of origin. With life becoming less permanent, as we create for the moment and not for longevity, sites like America's Stonehenge whispers a simplicity and balanced way of existence, and murmurs of the harmony we once all knew. Thank you for joining us on this incredible expedition into the world of history and esoterics, forever reminded of a time long vanquished. This is America's Stonehenge.